Okay. Well, good morning to everyone on the West Coast. Good afternoon for those of you on the East Coast, and then something in between. I am seeing those numbers climb very quickly, so I'm excited to get us kicked off. My name is Carrie Scott. I work at Spruce Health. If you have joined us before, then you probably know me and you're familiar with me hosting these fun events every month. I am so excited to bring back a favorite friend of ours, Mr. Patrick Casale. I'm going to let him intro himself because he's a dynamo. He's a Renaissance man. I can't possibly wrap him up, in a way that will give him enough credit. But I do want to let you know why we're here today, and that's to talk about expanding your impact and your income in 2025. There is so much good content to cover, and I can't wait to get into it. Couple of quick housekeeping things before we get started. This session is being recorded. So if for some reason you've got to jump off, or if you miss something and you want to revisit it later, do not fret. I will be sending the recording out shortly after we wrap today. Also, if you look down at the bottom of your screen, you'll see a Q&A function. Please use that to drop in any questions or comments that you might have for Patrick. We're going to try to take questions as we go if they're relevant to the material and the slide that we're on. If not, we're going to save them for the end, and we will try to get through as many of them as we can. But please drop them in there as you think of them so we don't miss anything. What am I forgetting? I think
Where is everyone coming from? Put that in the
that's
Q&A.
a
We always
great.
want to get a good idea of like where you're listening from, where you're watching from, because Carrie and I have done a bunch of these together, and I'm always just kind of curious about what part of the world you are in.
I love that. And we have people telling us, okay, Boston, Colorado, North Carolina, Texas, Yorktown, Virginia, Massachusetts, Phoenix, Florida, Minnesota. My goodness, you guys are just Alaska, Missouri, Utah,
Oh,
LA, Oregon, Arkansas. My gosh, we've got Jennifer in the Bay Area. This is amazing, you guys.
I,
Wow.
I love this stuff because Carrie, I don't know how many of these we've done together now. I feel like it's like 7 or 8, and I really enjoy being here.
Yeah.
Um, for those of you who are listening, like Carrie did an introduction for Spruce, and you really should check their services out if you're in private practice. I've used Spruce for years, and I cannot recommend the service enough.
Hmm.
And I really just want to double down on that because these free webinars are great sources of information. And I really appreciate the fact that you continue to have me on here.
Oh, well, I love that. Thank you, Patrick. And he was not paid to say that, folks. I think most of the people on this call are probably very familiar with Spruce, but if you're not, and if you're joining us for the first time, in a nutshell, medical communication platform that just makes it easier for providers and patients to connect across channels, any way that's best for you and best for your patient. I've been told it's like having your office in your pocket. It's all the things. And I love that Patrick says that, it's something that he has to double down on because I hear that a lot. And I'm not a doctor, I am a patient, but I know that it's invaluable to be able to connect on your terms. So if you want to learn more, hit me up afterward or head over to our site. But for the spirit of getting things kicked off, I'm going to pass the baton to Patrick, and I'm going to just turn my video off so that you can focus all your attention on him. So thank you, Patrick.
Okay, thank you, Carrie. I hate introductions so much, and anytime someone asks me to introduce myself, I kind of shrink back. But because this entire presentation is about moving beyond private practice, creating alternative streams of income, and I think this is perfect timing as we move into a new year, I think I should do my bio, which is very short and sweet. But if you don't know who I am, I'm Patrick Casale. He, his are my pronouns. I'm an autistic ADHD mental health therapist, neurodivergent business coach, TEDx speaker, retreat host, podcast host, all the things who helps entrepreneurs work through imposter syndrome, self doubt, and perfectionism. Coined the phrase doubt yourself, do it anyway, because I'm going to talk about that in this presentation and that mentality in general. I am the founder of All Things Private Practice and the host of the All Things Private Practice podcast, as well as the Divergent Conversations podcast. And I also am a group practice owner here in Asheville, North Carolina. I think that's enough for me because I don't want to talk about myself. So if you're here today, you're probably interested in expanding beyond private practice. And it's something I've been thinking about and doing for a very long time. Just to give you a timeline, and makes me realize I should have made a timeline slide. Um, I got my master's in 2015 in clinical mental health counseling. I then worked in community mental health, found myself in the wonderful world of middle management where I could not support my staff enough because we didn't have enough resources, but was always being asked to do more productivity wise from our higher ups, as a lot of you can probably relate to. That burnt me out very quickly. And I said, I'm going to take the leap into private practice. And I said that over and over and over again, probably, I don't know, upwards of 1,000 times. Sometimes I would write my resignation notice. Sometimes I would think I was going to hand it in, and I would always figure out a reason not to. Fast forward a year from that, and it's 2017, and I've really had enough. And, I think we all have like these last straw moments if you are in community mental health or something in that setting where you're just like, I can't do this anymore. I have to get out. Whether I go back to bartending, whether I go work at Uber, like I need to do something differently because my mental health is just really rapidly deteriorating. And I finally took that leap and put my notice in. I always assumed that private practice was going to be the finish line. And I really thought, like, okay, I'm going to move into private practice and this is what I'm going to do for the next 25, 30 years of my life. As someone who is neurodivergent and has a lot of interests and is very entrepreneurial and has a lot of creativity, doing one thing for the rest of my life is just simply not realistic. That was a lie that I told myself. But again, I didn't know that there was anything else available to me. I kind of think that in our profession, a lot of the time, we either think that we're either going to go into academia, we're going to go into community mental health, or we're going to go into private practice, and that is it. Those are the only things I can do with my degree, and that's just simply not true. So I can't see your screen or your responses right now while I'm sharing, but I would love for you to put into the Q&A. What stage of business ownership are you in? Are you in the startup stage where you are literally starting to think about going into your own business? Are you already established? Are you looking to grow? If you're looking to grow, what are the things that you're interested in? But I also want to know what are the things that are holding you back, because I want to always get to know both sides of the coin, so to speak. And I will stop my screen share in a second so I can see some of the responses.
I can also let you know, so far people are being shy, but Elena just weighed in and said, looking to grow, interested in eTools courses, retreats. Gosh, some good feedback pouring in now. Interested in growing beyond just clients. Looking to scale, move away from clinical, not sure how to start. Wow, we're getting lots of good comments back, you guys. And Patrick, I'll be sure to capture all these and share them with you so you have a better sense of who we were sharing with today.
Great. Thank you. Yeah. So I think like when we start to think about that, I mean, immediately we start to think about like, what is it that I want to do? And if you're like me, you might have a million different ideas of things that you want to do. And it can feel really overwhelming because it becomes like, where do I start? How do I get going? It's also really easy to start thinking about like, but I don't know anything about this. And I want to challenge that idea because you probably didn't know anything about starting a private practice and you probably were really scared to do it. And there was probably a lot of hesitation and a lot of self doubt, a lot of perfectionism. I've worked with so many of you who just won't publish your website or change your niche because you're so worried that it's not perfect yet or that you can't let the idea get out into the world. Maybe it's better suited for somebody else. And I want to challenge that because I think that your voices are needed, your stories are needed, your expertise is needed. And there's so many of you with such good creative ideas. I want to give you a zoom out of an exercise that I like to do a lot when I'm feeling like I'm not doing enough. I'm not happy with where my career is taking me. Why am I not working on A, B, and C? Some of that is capitalism, right? But some of it is simply untrue. And I have to check myself sometimes. And I want you all to think about doing this too. I want you to create some sort of visual aid or timeline. Whether you draw it, whether you write it, whether you create it virtually or digitally, or you just create it mentally, I want you to think of the timeline. I always think about 2015 getting my master's. I always think about 2017 of starting my own business and my own private practice. And then I do a fast forward. What has happened in the last 7.5 years, almost going on 8, right? Because we're almost in the new year. What have I done? What have I created? What have been the speed bumps? What have been the hurdles? What are the things that I feel really proud about? What are the things that I still want to work towards? Those things really help me kind of clarify and stabilize. And it allows me to step back instead of working in it all the time. And one thing that I think about is like since 2017, some of the things that I have done and that you can do, and I want to just say and emphasize, you can't do this all at once. So when I list this out, it's going to feel overwhelming. But since 2017, I have started All Things Private Practice, which had a Facebook group of upwards of 15,000 people. It's been paused for a while because I hate moderating, but that turned into a podcast, which has been sponsored and monetized. Spruce Health was actually a sponsor at one point in time, but I've had over 15 different sponsors who actually pay me to talk, which is wild to me. I have created coaching programs where I've helped therapists start their private practices, grow their private practices, take that leap, work through that imposter syndrome, work through that self-doubt, rebrand, re-niche, get more confident in who they are. I've run 2-day courses. I've run 6-month cohorts and high ticket coaching programs. I've hosted over 19 different retreats all over the world. I just hosted my first international summit in Italy where I rented an entire medieval Italian village and got 100 mental health therapists and entrepreneurs out into the middle of nowhere in Italy. And we spoke on a stage that was built in the 1600s. It was amazing. I am writing a book right now and just got signed with an agent. I have a TED Talk coming up in February in Colorado. I have been a keynote speaker at conferences throughout the world. I own a group practice which employs 25 neurodivergent people. Typically, we are consisting of all autistic ADHDers in North Carolina, supporting Western North Carolina and beyond. There's so much that we can do, but we have to really get clear on the first thing that we want to work towards, because it's very easy to say, I want to do coaching, I want to do courses, I want to do training, speaking engagements, retreats, podcasting, and you can do it all. There's no limitation. But if you're like me and you try to do too much too quickly and you try to take on too many projects, what ends up happening is I end up doom scrolling on my phone or watching Netflix or just laying on my couch, and I don't do any of it. And that can really create a shame spiral of, see how lazy you are? Some ableism comes up. Look at how you never get these ideas finished. My ADHD can say that very often. And I have to, again, reframe and step back and focus on the one thing that comes next. So if you're thinking about coaching programs, I'm just going to walk you through some very simple steps that you see on your screen. And this is applicable to everything we're going to talk about today. Defining your niche is huge. Like, that is so important. Who you want to help and what problem you want to solve. So regardless if you're thinking of coaching, courses, group practice, retreats, podcasting, who is your target audience? Think about that. If you know who your target audience is and what problem you want to help them solve, put it in the Q&A. I want you to write, I want everyone to open up a Google Doc or some sort of doc too right now so you can get your ideas out there. When my ideas simply live in my head, they take up too much space. It's too much clutter and it's way too overwhelming and they never become reality. So I actually have to get them out on paper, and I'm going to help you share how you can work through some of the vulnerability of being seen. It's about creating a framework, outlining clear steps or milestones for the course that you want to offer or the coaching program that you want to offer. It's about setting boundaries. A lot of you are probably thinking, how do I do all of this with my clinical license without putting it at risk? what I'm going to recommend to all of you if you do want to grow beyond private practice is that you create a separate business entity. All of my stuff that I just listed is housed under All Things Private Practice, which is a separate LLC from Resilient Mind Counseling, because I don't want there to be confusion for clients to say, I was confused about whether or not this was therapy. You don't want to give the wrong impression, and you don't want to put your license at risk that you've worked so freaking hard to obtain. Pricing and marketing is really important, and we're going to talk about this with everything, because this is really important no matter what you decide to pursue. Your niche is really important. Your marketing is really important. Those two things are the things that I see people get hung up on the most. You might have the best idea in the world, but if your marketing sucks, or you don't have an audience, or you don't really know who you're marketing to, it's really challenging to get your ideas off the ground. And it's a hell of a lot easier for you to say, see, this is why I didn't try. I knew it wasn't going to be successful. It fell flat. And that's not what I want for you. I know a lot of you want to host retreats. And I actually have an event coming up in January, a 2-day online intensive where I help people build their retreats and their marketing and their sales pages and their contracts and who to hire. But here's what I see happen very often is that you have the best retreat idea in the world. You choose the perfect location. You set your pricing, and you're probably very nervous about the price point because as therapists, right? Money stuff. It's a struggle. You don't have the audience built. So that risk that you take to put that deposit down or to book the vendors or to publish the dates, it falls flat because you don't have the audience built. One thing that I recommend doing for all of the things that I'm talking about right now is providing value. Free workshops, activities, webinars, info sessions. If you know and identify your niche and what you're going to help them with, then you can probably create upwards of 10, 20, 30 free webinars, free trainings, free info sessions on how you are going to show up and help them through that issue or through that problem or with that transformation. This stuff is really, really important, and it doesn't get built overnight. So everything I listed really happened since 2020. I was in practice for 3 years and I got bored and I wanted to do other things. And I realized that very early. And I feel guilty for saying this, but I definitely had some therapy sessions where, my eye is looking at the clock more often than I'm used to. And I'm really ready to get out of session so I can work on all the other things that are in my head. That's not a great feeling, right? Not as the therapist, not for the client, not in general. And in reality, as I started to step into that, I was freaking scared. I remember before I had any audience built up, I remember doing Facebook Lives in my house while we were all in quarantine, like for the first couple of months of COVID. And I remember doing Facebook Lives on imposter syndrome and self-doubt and perfectionism. Nobody was watching because I didn't have an audience built. The only person who ever was watching was my grandma. She would always comment about oh, I like the new paint that you used in the living room, or your dogs look so cute. And I'm like, get out of here, grandma. That's not the point of this. But I remember doing those and being so nervous to even talk about these things. And I was so uncomfortable. I've been holding myself back for years. I was helping other therapists in Asheville build their practices early on and helping them with their niches and their marketing and their branding and getting more clients, because that stuff always came naturally to me. I would do it for lunch or for coffee, and I would always overextend myself. And people would say, you should start a business where you do this. And I would say, no, who the hell am I to do that? Who wants to take advice from me? I don't know what I'm doing. I don't have any training in this. And I would always convince myself to stay small. And I say to myself, there's already someone in my area in Asheville doing this stuff. I'm sure a lot of you know Allison Per Year with Abundance Practice Building. She's a colleague of mine and a friend, and she helps people build their practices. And I would say, why would anyone hire me if they could hire her? And I just remember having lunch with someone one day, and they're like, it's all about your personality. It's all about how you show up. Everyone can do this. It's just about your own voice, your own perspective. And that's applicable throughout all of this. You're not going to be the first one to come up with an idea. You're not going to be the first one to come up with a podcast or a retreat or a private practice. But you are going to be the only you who shows up with your personality, your lived experience, your training, your perspective. That stuff matters. And that's what draws people to you. That's how you build your audience. And by being authentically you, by being vulnerable, by putting yourself out there, that's how a lot of this gets done. And that's how a lot of this starts to build. I was always amazed that people would message me or reach out to me after I would talk about the struggles that I have, not only in my business, but personally, thanking me and saying like, oh my God, I'm so appreciative that you said that. I feel the same way. And I just never thought much of it. Like I'm just being myself, right? And it just you start to realize like that's what people want. They want realness. They want authenticity. Social media can convince us that everything is glamorous and everything is great. And I think we all know that that's bullshit. But it's very easy to get caught up in the shiny object syndrome or just comparison culture. Look at how much so-and-so is doing. How come I can't do that? Look at how many likes they get on their posts. Look at how many followers they have. It's really easy to get caught up into that mindset. I've done it a million times. And it's really easy when you're feeling that insecurity, that self-doubt, that potential RSD or rejection sensitive dysphoria, if you're ADHD or autistic, to really let that affect how you move forward and how you don't pursue the things that you're passionate about because we're so concerned about what other people might say. So again, circling back, podcasting, niching down, figuring out what 10 to 15 topics can I easily talk about for 20 to 30 minutes. Don't even worry about the title right now. We get so caught up in like the final details. I need everything to be figured out before I can get started. Let it speak to you. What I would personally do if you want to start a podcast is start recording. You can just do it on Zoom. That's where both of my podcasts are recorded on Zoom. It's easy. We edit the audio, we edit the video, we upload it, and like that's it. And last year, All Things Private Practice Podcast secured over $120,000 in sponsorship. I was blown away. That's not money that I even knew existed in the podcasting realm, nor did I think I could secure it. And then I thought, why are people paying me to talk? But again, you don't know until you try, until you put these ideas out into the world. So if you want to start a podcast, put in the Q&A that you want to start one. If you know what you want it to be about, include that too. I highly recommend doing what I'm saying with all of this stuff. Google Doc, bullet point list or checkbox list, color coded if you want. That's what I do. And I outline this stuff when I have these like idea dumps. And I have so many Google Docs labeled podcasting, courses, workshops, trainings. A lot of them live in Google Docs forever and never see the light of day. But again, it helps unclutter the ideas. It helps me actually start to spark that creativity. So what I want to challenge all of you to do, whether it's podcasting, courses, retreats, I want you to outline the things that you can confidently talk about, the things that you know, the things that you feel really passionate about. Because your podcast could turn into a book. Your podcast could turn into a workshop or a training series. Your podcast could turn into a retreat. These things that you may think are only suitable for one of these platforms can actually be suitable for all of them. Group practice ownership is something I never expected to fall into. It was 2021, and a friend of mine kept DMing me nonstop, like, hey, I want to get out of the hospital that I work at. I really want to come work with you. And I kept saying, like, I don't want to have a group practice. I don't know how to be a boss in that way. I don't really want that responsibility. Also, I help people start their practices. Why the hell would you want to come work for me? I'll just help you for free. I want camaraderie. I want teammates. I want support. I want supervision. I don't want to deal with the marketing side. I don't want to deal with the administrative side. Group practice ownership is not for everybody. I just want to name that now. And you have to ask yourself, and I do this when I offer one-on-one coaching and consulting, is, do you want to be a leader? Do you want to be a boss? Or do you simply want to make more money? And if you're saying, well, the calls are coming in and I have more than I can handle, and I'd rather refer in than out, but you don't want to be a leader, or you don't want to drive or steer the ship, then it's not for you. Because I cannot tell you how many hours I spend agonizing over my practice about making sure everyone feels taken care of, paid well, appreciated, not burnt out, is able to be their best selves. Like, there's so much stress that goes into this. I prioritize people over profit, and we have very, very long tenure. We don't have a lot of turnover. The average length of time that someone stays with us is almost 3 years. We've only been open for 3 years. So you can create a really cool infrastructure. You can create a really cool culture. But I would be lying to you if I was not in a unique position to prioritize people over profit, because all things private practice makes me money. So I don't need to really take profit from Resilient Mind Counseling. A lot of you are probably like, I'm the only earner in the family, or I need to make this money. You know, there are ways to do this in a way and still stay values aligned. Speaking opportunities. All of you are trained, probably upwards of at least a master's degree, potentially a PhD or a PsyD, and potentially other degrees, not to mention life experience, not to mention the things that you are really passionate about. So if you're thinking about speaking opportunities, they are out there and they do exist, and there are paid opportunities to be had. I think there are lots of ways to start getting more comfortable, whether you join like a local Toastmasters group or something like that, where you get to practice giving speeches and get more confident, or you start to leverage podcast opportunities where you get to be a guest on other opportunities and you get to talk about the things that you're passionate about. But putting yourself out there is huge. And that's why I talk about doubt yourself, do it anyway. You know, it really is about the vulnerability of putting yourself out there. But you miss every shot you don't take, right? For any Office fans out there, like Wayne Gretzky crossed out Michael Scott underneath. I never expected to have a TEDx talk coming up. I never expected to be on that stage talking about late in life autism discovery and journey. I never expected to be a keynote speaker at 5 different conferences last year. None of this stuff, if we do that timeline exercise, zooming back to 2015, 2016, 2017, these were not realistic options or possibilities. But it is about putting yourself out there. It is about getting really confident in terms of, what can I confidently talk about? What are the things that I feel really passionate about? If you know people who have podcasts and you have something that you want to say and you feel like you bring value, don't hesitate to reach out and say, hey, I'd love to be a guest. I've listened to your episodes. I like what you do. You know, build that relationship. Don't just cold call and say like, hey, I'm looking for guest opportunities, or how do I become a guest? Give a little bit of context. Like, I really liked episode 35. I liked this interview that you did, blah, 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 blah. I would love to be a guest and talk about topic A, B, and C. Do you have an application process? Do you have a way that I can come on? You would be surprised at how often people will just say, yeah, sure. Here's my scheduling link. I really want to encourage you all to try really hard to step out of that comfort zone. I talked about ethical considerations and next steps. I'm not going to harp on this for too long because it will be in the recording. And I just really think you need to get really clear on separation of LLC or corporation or business infrastructure. If you're thinking about doing things that are not housed under your clinical license, then it needs to be in a separate business. So I just want everyone to hear that. I don't want to like minimize that. I'm not going to share my upcoming events right now. I want to take questions before I do that. So, okay, I'm back and I see
All right.
99 questions. Okay.
Awesome. Well, so we've had so much great stuff put into the Q&A. A lot of people just kind of weighing in on the questions that you asked of them, but let's start up closer midway here. An anonymous attendee said, as a licensed therapist who also wants to coach, do I need to be certified as a coach? Can I offer both? Can I use my current private practice website for this?
Yeah, just going back to what I just said is like coaching and therapy need to be completely separate. Starting a different LLC, getting a different EIN, getting a different bank account, complete separation. I know some of you are thinking, but I already do this and it's on the same website, or I know people who do. I just caution you to be really careful about putting your license at risk. It's not worth it. It's just not the way to go.
Okay, that's good. And this may be part and parcel of that. Ramsey is asking, if I go into coaching, can I still use my designations?
Yeah, I mean, you can still say, you can still add your license type and your designations behind your name because those are in fact your credentials, but ultimately you want to make it really clear and really transparent that the coaching business and the therapy business are separate. That's what the clinical licensure boards want to see. And you really don't want to ever leave confusion for potential clients to think that they are actually signing up for therapy when they're signing up for coaching and vice versa, because that's how harm can be done. So we really want to just minimize opportunities for clients to be confused.
Yep, that makes a lot of sense. Ramsey's also asked, how early should we start marketing before an event?
Okay, yeah, that's a great question. So marketing runway for a retreat, at least 6 months, potentially a year. If you want to do like a weekend workshop or a course or something like that, I always say at least 60 days, but I typically would suggest longer. If you have an active captive audience who's like saying, hey, we want this from you, or we are really looking for courses or programs or retreats for this topic, then you kind of know that you can get away with a little bit less runway. But that's what I think a lot of people get wrong is they don't establish enough marketing runway to really test the audience, to really test the market, to really build that know, like, and trust factor. It takes a lot of time. And that's one thing with everything we just talked about that a lot of people really miss out on.
Yeah, that makes a whole lot of sense. And on that same subject of marketing, Deborah wrote in and said that she is redefining her career focus as she moves into semi-retirement. It's a fairly lengthy message, but the nut of it is that she wants to expand her reach for the specialty workshops that she wants to conduct. But she's overwhelmed by the necessary shift in marketing, brand recognition, presence on social media, and LinkedIn. I think the question there is, how does one do that and do it in a way that isn't overwhelming?
Yeah, I think that, when we're doing this, what I would recommend doing is like hiring someone. You can outsource this stuff. And if you're feeling really overwhelmed with your marketing or um with your strategy, social media marketers exist. And I think that it's great to delegate a lot of the stuff that we either don't know how to do, that we don't want to do, or we don't have time to do. That way you can focus on the things that you are good at and that you are passionate about. So I think that's a big piece of all of that. Yeah, I think that would be my answer to that.
Okay. And what about the best ways to build an audience that's distinct from your therapy practice? Like, how have you done that?
Yeah, so defining that niche is huge. So getting a real clear understanding of who that target audience is, aside from your therapy practice clients. then what I would be doing is not only creating a Facebook group specific for that audience and for people who work with that audience, I would be creating an Instagram page, a TikTok page, a LinkedIn page. I would be making content pretty consistently. A lot of marketing people would say that you should honestly be posting, like, for the first couple of months, 2 to 3 times a day. And a lot of you are probably like, oh, that sounds horrible. And I feel like that too. I don't have that energy to create that much content. But what I would absolutely try to do is consistently create content. So if that's like, I know for a fact once a month I can create 30 new videos and some static posts and some graphics and Canva, and get it all scheduled, because there are so many different social media scheduling softwares out there that will do it all for you, then I would really start building that audience and posting consistently. What I would not do is like post a couple of times and then let it go for a month and then come back to it. Think about like restaurants that you like or businesses that you like to support. Those are the things, right? Like if you look at their Instagram and they haven't posted since August, you might think, is this place even open? Are they closed? Like, how do I know what's coming up? So, consistent posting and content creation is really, really, really huge. And that's something like, not to market myself too much while we're sitting here, but I figure you might as well have these resources. The summit that we're hosting in Scotland in July is going to go over a lot of what we're talking about today, because that's what it's all about, is just creating all these alternative streams of income and getting really past that self-doubt and that stage of insecurity of like, I can't get started. I don't know where to go from here.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. I asked Patrick, can I come and join this summit?
Absolutely.
He says
You can come.
yes. So
Yes,
many
we
people.
want all entrepreneurs there. You know?
Well, I love that. And just kind of coming around full circle to what you were saying there about, just like get it done, get out there and make these things happen. A few people have weighed in saying, I want to start a podcast. I totally want to do that, but I've been sitting on it for so long. Mersha was saying, I have a whole document full of episode ideas. I bought the mic, the camera, everything. I just don't start. How do you encourage people to just that last step? How do you get that ball just forward?
Yes, that's where that doubt yourself, do it anyway model comes in for me. And what I mean by that, for those of you who are like stuck in that stage where you're like, I have all of these ideas, I have all the stuff, I need to do it, I just can't press play. Put that idea out into the world. And I want to challenge all of you to do that right now. So if you're sitting here and you're thinking, I have a podcast, I have a retreat idea, I have a course, or I have a coaching program that I want to do, but I've been sitting on this and I'm really struggling to actually take action, put it out into the world. And what I mean by that is, I want you to publicly post that on your personal Facebook or Instagram right now, if you feel comfortable doing so. Because here's what happens: once you get it out of your head and you put it out into the world, it's not that scary. The world keeps spinning, and it allows you to kind of start taking that imperfect action, which I believe wholeheartedly in, which is kind of like building the plane as you fly it. So instead of having the finished product ready to go and then you can tell everyone, you tell everyone now, this is what I'm going to do. This is what I'm going to create. And that really allows us to take back some of that power and control. And that's what I talk about on my podcast all the time. Like, is working through that self-doubt, putting yourself out into the world, even when you don't think you're quite ready. Because if you wait until it's perfect, it will never happen. And you will convince yourself, my ideas are better suited for somebody else, or I'm not the one who's going to be able to do this thing. And that's just simply untrue.
Yeah. Man, I love that, Patrick, because I think we're all, we all fall into that, even in what I do. There's just always self-doubt and I don't know if I can do it, but what's the worst thing that happens, right? Doubt yourself,
Exactly.
do it anyway. I freaking
Mm-hmm.
love that so much. Dayana is saying, can you speak to what could be helpful in looking for a speaking opportunity? I sometimes get stuck with, where do I even start?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, what I would start with is like, again, this is going to sound repetitive or redundant, but like, what am I really passionate about speaking about? Who is my niche? Who's my target audience? If you know the answer to that, then you can start Google searching conferences or speaking opportunities on LinkedIn. There are a ton of national conferences and local conferences that you can submit to, and they will typically have speaker proposal application windows, and it will say it pretty clearly on their websites. You can also reach out to different organizations um, and say, hey, I'm really interested in speaking about this. I think it would work really well for the population that you support or the customers that you support. Is there any way we can schedule a meeting to connect about my ideas? I would start trying to get on podcasts. I think that's a great opportunity because, again, it just gives you that confidence of reaching out. It also gives you the opportunity to share those speaking samples because you can actually use podcast examples to highlight some of your speaking style. I actually turned a podcast episode and leveraged it into a book deal that I'll be working on. So, like, you can highlight your expertise and your personality simply by going on a couple of podcast episodes and talking about topics that you're really passionate about. Um, and then if you know people who are hosting events like retreats, summits, conferences, reach out directly to them and say, hey, I would love to be a speaker. Do you have an application process? Can you let me know what that looks like? So it really does come down to putting yourself out there a little bit and getting comfortable with the uncomfortable.
Yep, that is good advice. Haley is asking for coursework. Do you get it trademarked, and is that process difficult?
Yeah, so I have trademarked a couple of things over the last couple of years. I trademarked the phrase doubt yourself, do it anyway. I've trademarked all things private practice. I trademarked divergent conversations. Um, I, the reason you would want to do that is to obviously protect yourself from someone else coming to you and saying, hey, I'm using that language or I'm using that phrase. You can't use it. So it's a protection process in that way. I don't have any plans to ever like issue a cease and desist if someone's using doubt yourself, do it anyway. I don't care. But it's more of a protective process for me. So someone can't tell me I can't use it. It is lengthy, takes 16 to 20 months of waiting. But if you're going to create something unique and specific with like a name or a framework or a different way of doing something, you probably definitely want to trademark it. And you would work with a lawyer who specifically specializes in that process. And it does take time. I forgot that I had even done it for Divergent Conversations until I got the email like a couple months ago. But I do recommend it if it's something really unique and specific.
Excellent. Christine is asking, would you have a different LLC for a course that's targeted toward niche clients in your counseling practice?
If it's going to be specific for your therapy clients and it's something that you could defend housing under your license and it's something that would be applicable for for a licensed clinician to be doing, I think it's totally fine to house it under your current organizational structure. If you ever have questions about that, you can always consult with attorneys in your area too, business attorneys who could give you like more specific state advice. I hate giving organizational and tax advice, not being a tax professional or an attorney, especially when every state is completely different. But I think it would be fine, but don't, obviously like consult with someone who can definitively say that.
Yep, prudent advice. Jeffrey has said that he's started making short videos explaining simple concepts like CBT principles and breathing techniques, which he's going to post on Instagram. Do you have any thoughts on this as marketing?
Yeah, you can post it on Instagram, TikTok, YouTube. Like you can repurpose that. You could turn whatever you're saying in those videos into static posts and graphics so that it's not all video based because social media algorithms constantly change what they like and what they don't like. Sometimes they really like static posts and graphics. Sometimes they really like short vertical form video. So it is about kind of trial and error of seeing like what works, what doesn't, and seeing like who's engaging with what. You could also turn those videos into blog posts for your website for SEO purposes. So you can repurpose content in so many different ways. so that you're not like reinventing the wheel and having to redo or recreate the same thing over and over and over again.
Yep. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And sort of on the heels of that, Lynn is saying, what are some, in quotes, easy ways to start building an audience? I know we touched on audience building a little earlier on. But I mean, is there a hack? Like, does it make sense to like buy lists or lean on a partner that says we can get you this many followers in this much time? Like, is any of that legit, or is it better to just do the work, grow the business?
I think it's like I've been tempted, in the past where I'm like, damn, I really would like to buy that list of 20,000 people. But
Yeah.
here's the thing, you buy that list of 20,000 people, 19,999 are going to tell you to F off when you send them an email and they're like, I didn't sign up for this.
Yeah.
Um, I think organic growth is the best way. It takes the most time. I don't think there's an easy way to consistently grow an audience other than consistent content creation. I think the reason I've been able to grow my audience, in addition to like, I do think the stuff I do is quality, but like it's taken time to refine it, is that I've been consistent for 4.5 years of posting all the time and creating content all the time. And it is exhausting at times, but I also recognize like it is a really important part of brand awareness because for any business, we're talking about know, like, and trust, right? I'm not going to refer to you. I'm not going to go to your business. I'm not going to like go check something out if I don't have that know, like, and trust established. And the way to do that, and a lot of marketing professionals would say the 80/20 rule is like 80% of your content should just be free. Give it away. Like, here are tips, here are strategies, here's some free worksheets, here's some like free guides that I've created for you, free webinars, etc. And that is really how people get to know you. I've done so many free webinars in the past where I wasn't exactly like stoked about it at the time because I was tired or I had other stuff to do. And at the end of it, because people got to know me and my personality, they reached out and said, like, hey, how can we work one-on-one together? Or how can I join your next course? Or how do I get on the list to come to that retreat that you're doing in New Zealand in 2026? Um, so I do think that it's a really wonderful way to offer value, record the webinars, turn those you can make those webinars like recurring free offers. So you don't always have to be live, but you can do a lot with free info sessions and webinar sessions just at the click of a button. And a lot of marketing people would say, like, go live on your social media, like, constantly. I hate it. I never do it. And I'm sure I could grow my audience even more if I did, but I absolutely despise it.
Yeah. Well, and that's important too, recognizing what you despise. And even if it's good for your business, like don't do the things you despise. There are other ways.
Exactly. And you can't be everywhere at once. And I think that's important to know, like, as we're talking about this stuff, is like, you can't be on all of the social media platforms all the time. You can't be on LinkedIn, so Facebook, TikTok, Instagram, etc., all the time. Pick one where
Mhm.
you feel like you feel confident with it, you know it well enough, and you know that your audience spends time on it. So I think that you don't have to feel like I have to be in all the places all at once.
Okay. Okay, good. Good. Here's something from Sandy, kind of a pivot from what we've been talking about. She's asking if you have any recommendations on hiring people to perform specific tasks, because she's saying she hasn't had a lot of luck with that, hired two people, neither of them did what they were supposed to do, and it resulted in termination.
Yeah, so I don't know, Sandy, if you're like me, but if I don't know what I'm exactly what I'm looking for or hiring for, and I'm vague about it, like I'm like, oh, you're gonna help me create content, or like you're gonna help me do this thing, but I don't really know exactly what I want them to do, it can lead to a lot of frustration. It can lead to a lot of firing and termination and onboarding and hiring. I think getting really, really clear about what you are trying to outsource and delegate, really, really clear about the systems that you want someone to know and be proficient in. And then going through some sort of interview process, whether it be virtual asynchronistic, where you send video or messaging back and forth, get some testimonials, get some examples of their work, have them work on like a short project for you. A lot of people like Fiverr for that because you can hire specifically for like short projects with very specific asks. And then if you feel like, oh yeah, this works really well, I think it can become a more long-term relationship. I went through so many VAs back in 2020 because I didn't know what I was asking for or what I needed before finding someone who has been working with me now for almost 4 years. So it does take time and it can be frustrating, but I think there are lots of ways to get really clear on that too.
Okay, excellent. Let's see. Now moving back over to coaching, Lydia is asking, can coaching be a part of insurance panels, or how do you charge? Is it cash only?
No, and again, I just want to really emphasize this. Like this question obviously is something that comes up a lot. Has already come up in this chat like 20 different ways.
Yeah.
Separate your coaching from your therapy. Like there's no coaching that's going to be paid for by insurance.
Oh,
Coaching is not something you're doing with your therapy clients. I just want all of you to hear that. Um, a lot of therapists become coaches because they're sick of the restrictions that either licensing boards have or insurance panels have, etc. But again, you are not coaching your therapy clients, and you have to maintain that separation. And I think if it feels really confusing, it may not be the path to go down then. Um, so I just want to really, really double, triple, quadruple down on that.
yes, thank you. You're right. It has come up in a number of different ways. And I think that answer really brought it home. So thanks for that. Um, okay, how do you monetize your podcast? I have one with a friend, but I'm wondering how to get sponsors.
Oh, yeah. Great question. So when I first started All Things Private Practice podcast 3 years ago, I reached out to some businesses that I had affiliate partnerships with, like Hushmail, Spruce Health, a couple others, where it was like I was already referring people their way. We already had some relationship built. And I just said, hey, I have this podcast. Here's the niche. Here's who is the target audience. Would you be interested in sponsoring? I was actually amazed that like 6 of the 10 that I reached out to were like, yeah, let's try it out. Um, but if you want to like secure bigger ticket sponsorship, which I have for that podcast now, the receptionist.com is my big annual sponsor. They've actually sponsored 3 years in a row, all 52 episodes of each year at a pretty decent price point, and it works for both of us. But you have to create some like sponsorship pages, some kits. They're going to want analytics. They're going to want to know how many new subscribers you have. They're going to want to know how many people listen to the episodes the entire way through. What part of the world are they listening from? They're going to want some demographic info. So make sure if you're pitching that you have that information readily available and just let them know, like, hey, I have all the analytics and the data. Um, Here's our target audience. Here's how we think that you are a great sponsor for them. Because, for example, Divergent Conversations, my other podcast, just passed 1.7 million downloads this year, which is enormous. And we have such a hard time securing sponsorship because it's not as niched as All Things Private Practice, which speaks directly to private practice therapists. So you have to get really clear on that, and you have to get really clear on what you're offering when you're pitching them.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. From Amy, she's asking, can you speak to how you made the logistical transition from seeing clients all day to the other things that you do? Did you clear your schedule first or vice versa?
You're going to have to take some risk in it, because there is some risk in like stepping away from consistent, secure income, which felt very similar to the risk of stepping away from community mental health that paid me a salary into private practice. So what I started to realize in 2020 was like, I don't want to be a therapist full time anymore. I actually haven't been a therapist now in almost 3 years because I had major throat surgery 2 years ago, and it just impacted my voice to a point where I can't come back to that. But I started doing my coaching programs at night and on weekends. And then I started like recognizing that as my coaching business was growing, I was condensing and consolidating my therapy schedule to maybe like Tuesday through Thursday. Then I noticed like it was becoming a Tuesday, Wednesday. Then I noticed like, so it was a constant reevaluation process, and I had to really obtain some clinical supervision about how to transition some of my clients out as ethically as I could, because I did have to make some hard decisions and have a lot of hard conversations. But it was a process where I really did have to refine and reevaluate and reevaluate. And it was pretty constant for almost 2 years, where until I came to a point where I no longer see clinical clients anymore.
Okay. Okay. Um, Lacey is asking, is it ethical to develop a course and then sell it to my own therapy clients? Would it be okay to have that under my private practice LLC, or would I need another LLC for that?
I mean, I know a lot of or therapists that have courses and programs that their therapy clients definitely participate in. I think the messiness gets into how do you market that ethically? Like, how are you talking to your clients about that program? And that is something I really would consult with either like an employment attorney or a clinical supervisor, or the combination of the two, because the marketing piece is really what gets really messy there.
Yeah, good answer. I just wanted to say we're at 11:58, so we've got about 2 minutes left. Is there anything more you wanted to share with the group? Do you want to give folks a way to get in contact, anything like that, or do you want to tackle one or two more questions?
Um, I think that if you're interested in working with me, you can go to my website, allthingspractice.com. If you're interested in any of the events that I shared in my presentation, like we have a 3-day group practice ownership event coming up at the end of January with Maureen Werbach of the Group Practice Exchange and Gabrielle Giuliano Villani. I have a 2-day intensive online retreat builders event for those of you who want to build retreats. I only have a couple of spots left for that. This will all be in the slides too, and on my website. We still have spots in Scotland for the Doubt Yourself, Do It Anyway Summit in Edinburgh next July. And we have a leadership retreat in Greece on the island of Crete next September. Again, also all on my website, allthingspractice.com. And you can check out my podcasts. They're on all major platforms and YouTube. And I do one-on-one coaching. I do speaking engagements with organizations. So lots of ways to connect with me on my website, allthingspractice.com.
My goodness, Patrick, I don't know how you do it all. But
On a daily basis. So
oh my gosh. Well, as always, this has been so eye-opening and so much good content was shared. Thank you for that. I think we also got through a lot of great questions. We weren't able to tackle all of them. So if anyone really needs to get in front of Patrick, you know how to reach him. But again, to reiterate, I will be sending the recording and the slides to everybody shortly after we wrap today. Please keep your eyes peeled for future events, and please join Patrick at one of his retreats. I'm going to figure out how I can do it because I want to go to Greece.
I would love to have you. So if you have questions about that stuff, just reach out and let me know. And yeah, thanks, Carrie. This is always a blast. And I'm glad we did this right before the new year.
Yes, I am too. It gives us all a lot to think about, and I'm going to be thinking about it.
Yeah, absolutely. Take care,
Okay.
y'all.
Thanks, folks. Bye.